One of the parks towards the top of the list of parks that could be receiving roller coasters next year is Six Flags Over Georgia. There are tons of rumors going around, particularly involving Georgia Cyclone. A bunch of markers have shown up on the footers for this ride. You can see some photos of them here sent in by viewers. Now, what's kind of interesting is if you compare these markings to markings that we saw on Mean Streak or Hurler, they are circular, however, they're a completely different color. We don't necessarily know if that means anything. The ones on Mean Streak and Hurler were orange. These are green. So part of me does wonder if that means something, but of course that's got a bunch of people talking saying, hold up now, is Georgia Cyclone going to be RMC'd? And when you think about the roller coasters in the Six Flags chain that could be RMC'd, Georgia Cyclone is definitely towards the top of that list. It's a compact roller coaster, and if you RMC'd it, you get a ride kind of like Wicked Cyclone, which that ride is absolutely amazing. So that would do wonders here. And Six Flags Over Georgia hasn't received a roller coaster since Daredevil Dive, and I believe that was 2011. So it's been a while. So I think 2018 is definitely looking like a year when they could be receiving their next roller coaster. But here's where things get interesting. I may be in the minority here, but I do not think that Georgia Cyclone will be RMC'd next year. Now, let me explain myself first. Yes, I think these markings mean something. I'm not completely ignoring them. I think markings on footers could mean a lot. And I think the odds of Georgia Cyclone getting RMC'd are strong, but I'm not sure it would be next year. I'm kind of leaning towards Georgia Cyclone getting RMC'd down the line. Maybe 2019, but who knows. I think, however, that Six Flags Over Georgia will be receiving a roller coaster next year, but it'll be a completely ground-up roller coaster. Now, could Georgia Cyclone be RMC'd next year? Yeah, maybe, but remember that RMC has a lot going on next year. You have Mean Streak, Hurler, and there's a Raptor track going out, which is rumored for California's Great America. So that's already 3 projects, all 3 of which we have seen a lot of progress for. RMC has released videos of the Raptor track testing, so even though we haven't seen construction start at California's Great America, the land is being surveyed. And with all the tests that RMC is doing, that Raptor track is definitely getting close to being sent out there. And Hurler is in full deconstruction mode. And Mean Streak already has a ton of track on it. So RMC has a ton of stuff going on, and we can probably expect some free spins to go out next year. And if you remember, RMC does the track for those. So that's a lot of work for them in 1 year. So that's what makes me hesitant on them adding Georgia Cyclone to the list. Now that being said, an announcement could still happen if it does end up being next year. Remember that when they've announced the closure of Wicked Cyclone or Twisted Colossus, all of those rides, they closed them in early August. And then that way they had them ready for around a Memorial Day opening. So those are just some things to take into consideration if it did end up happening next year. But let's talk about what I do think will be coming next year at Six Flags Over Georgia. If there's one thing that this park needs, it's a launch coaster. When I visited the park in May, I could tell that they have a solid collection of rides and they have a lot of great family areas and a decent collection of roller coasters. However, I found that Goliath was really the only standout one there. The rest of them were good, don't get me wrong, and an RMC Georgia Cyclone could be the best ride in the park if that opened. But the main gap in their lineup isn't an RMC, it's a launch coaster. And let's go back to what Six Flags said about 2018. They said that they'll be adding 5 first-of-its-kinds or record-breaking attractions. I don't think an RMC Georgia Cyclone fits that. Yeah, okay, maybe if they put like most inversions on an RMC, but to me, going with a launch coaster, there's a ton more options to fit that bill, because you could go with a completely new type of roller coaster. S&S released a bunch of concept art for possible new attractions. One of them included almost a super loop type roller coaster that was launched and had wing seats. And we know that Six Flags loves working with S&S, so who knows, maybe they could be working with one of those. I'd personally like to see a much larger type coaster go here. Could a B&M be coming to Six Flags Over Georgia? I mean, maybe. Here's the thing, though. They already have several B&Ms. They have Georgia Scorcher, Batman the Ride, Goliath, and Superman Ultimate Flight. They already have plenty of B&Ms, so if they went with a launch coaster, I don't think it would be from B&M as much as a wing coaster like Thunderbird would be great here. I'm thinking we'll probably see something from Premier Rides or S&S. That is, if Six Flags did decide to go with a launch coaster at Six Flags Over Georgia next year. Now, some people would bring up, okay, well, so would they go with a Skyrocket too? And I don't think that that would be it, because again, if we're thinking about this idea that Six Flags is adding 5 record-breaking or first-of-its-kind attractions, we're assuming that those would probably be roller coasters that they're talking about. I mean, maybe it wouldn't, so maybe I'm thinking too far into this, and what's going to Six Flags Over Georgia wouldn't be record-breaking or a first of its kind. But I think there's a strong possibility that it could be. Which, if that's the case, then they'd probably go with something more along the lines of Full Throttle. Not necessarily in terms of layout, but how when Full Throttle went to Magic Mountain, it had the world's largest loop and it had those 3 launches, a really creative layout. Premier Rides could easily do something like that with Six Flags Over Georgia. After all, that is a terrain park. They could totally work it in, and it would be a fantastic fit there. It's exactly what they need. So, that being said, I'm not saying that this is absolutely going to happen. These are just some of my thoughts. I'm not really buying into the whole RMC Georgia Cyclone for next year. Again, I think it is a possibility, but when you look at the RMC is really working with Cedar Fair next year with Hurler, Mean Streak, and likely a Raptor track, it'd kind of be surprising to me if Six Flags also was adding in an RMC. I feel like Cedar Fair has a hold of RMC for this year, and Six Flags will probably come back to RMC at a later date. So at this point, I think all we can do is wait. We'll see what happens, and if an announcement comes from Six Flags Over Georgia where they are closing Georgia Cyclone, we'll know exactly why. If not, I think the end point of this video is that we should be expecting some sort of roller coaster next year, whether it is a ground up or an RMC. It's Six Flags Over Georgia's turn. They've waited long enough. This is a good park, and a new roller coaster is exactly what they've been needing. So let me know about what you think about all this. Post your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, stay tuned for more rumor videos coming soon to Coaster Studios.